In the 1980s, two researchers, Timothy Wilson and Patricia Linville, ran a study where they looked at freshmen in college and were checking to see if they could adjust their mindset and how that would shift their behaviors in the way that the outcomes that they saw over the next 4 years at college. And what they did was they brought the students in and they had some students just write about their experience and what the first semester of freshman year had been like. And then they had other students come in and watch videos of upper class students talking about their freshman year, talking about struggling and having to work hard to overcome some challenges in the new environment, and how they had worked to, their grades had struggled at first, but then they had continued to rise. And then they had those students journal about their experience as well and talk about, similar challenges that they had faced and so on. And what they found was that over the next year, the GPAs of the students who watched videos about other students, upperclassmen struggling, saw their GPAs rise significantly compared to the control group who continued to struggle and stagnate a little bit. And these changes not only stuck for 1 year, but actually held over the course of 4 years, to the point where the students who had watched the videos of their peers actually had higher GPAs by the time they graduated, and these findings have gone on to be replicated multiple times by other researchers. For example, Greg Walton at Stanford, who recently did this and found that not only do GPAs increase, but also the odds of finding a mentor in your career, the odds of getting a better job, the odds of having a higher earning potential in your career, all significantly raise simply by doing one simple thing, like having a 1-hour intervention where you watch videos of your peers and then journal about a similar experience. So what's going on here? How could something that small, seemingly insignificant, 1 hour over the course of 4 years, end up predicting whether or not you were going to succeed? Psychologists call these interventions, or mindset interventions, and they've gone on to become quite popular. For example, Carol Dweck out of Stanford University has published a book about growth mindset versus fixed mindset, which is another variation of these mindset interventions, which says that if you assume your abilities to be fixed, as in I have a fixed level of intelligence or a fixed level of ability, then you're less likely to succeed as if you assume your abilities have some growth-related aspect to where, yes, I'm not good at math now, but if I work quite hard at it, then I can become better. That's a growth mindset. And Dweck has found that the growth mindset has led to significantly different behavior and outcomes compared to students who have a fixed mindset, regardless of what type of genetic ability they were born with. So again, in the previous lessons, we were talking about shifting from between person behavior to within person behavior, where we're judging ourselves based on where we were previously and how we can get the most out of our genetic potential, rather than comparing ourselves to other people's genetic potential. And mindset is the perfect example of that, of where we shift to this internal dialogue and think about how can we rearrange our mindset to get the most out of what we have available, to capitalize on the genetic gifts and abilities that we have so that we can build better habits, improve our performance, and otherwise, achieve more success. And what's interesting about conversations around mindset is that they work, but they only work in a specific circumstance. It's not a magical fix-all to say, oh, well, just think differently, consider a growth mindset, and then magically you'll be able to improve. In fact, what we find is that mindset interventions work best when they're in an environment where resources are available but are untapped. So take, for example, schools, which is where many of these studies take place. Schools have resources, they have teachers, they have departments that are available for students, and they have a variety of things that are working in the student's favor, but only if the student chooses to take advantage of them. And this is the big thing about mindset interventions. It's like flipping a switch on a light grid. You need all of the grid to be laid. You have to have the electricians, you have to have the framework and the infrastructure, but once the infrastructure is there, you can just flick a switch and all the lights turn on in the city block. And this is how mindset interventions work. By having a small shift in mindset, you suddenly can capitalize on all the resources that are available to you. And so that's the power of some of these interventions, like, for example, those done by Linville and Wilson in the 80s on the freshman students. Once those students understood that struggle is difficult and a common thing for freshman students, that their peers went through the same thing, but then were also able to improve their GPA over time, they saw the situation differently. Having a shift in mindset allows you to reframe every experience that you come across throughout the rest of time. So, For example, if you were to look at things as, if you were to have a fixed mindset and say, oh, well, I must just not be good at college, or maybe I'm not made out to be in college. Well, what ends up happening is that if you get a bad grade on a test, you see that as evidence for the fact that you don't belong or that you're not cut out to make it here. Meanwhile, if you shift your mindset and view it as, this is something that all students struggle with, I know my peers had a challenge in the same situation, then you can start to see it as evidence of, this is a normal experience. I just need to continue to work hard. And this shift from seeing the world in one way to seeing it in another way can have a dramatic impact on your behavior because it changes how you interact with all of the future situations that you come across. And this is how something that might take only an hour in a research study could end up having big dividends over the course of the next 2, 3, 4 years. Now, let me make this applicable for you and I. Maybe you're in school, maybe not, but the mindset interventions can be useful regardless of where we find ourselves in life. Let me give you one example. So often we talk about responsibilities in our lives as something we have to do. I have to pick my kids up from school. I have to go to the gym and work out. I have to eat healthier. I have to stick to this diet plan. I have to work longer and stay late tonight at work. But instead, we could simply shift one word and reframe that experience. I get to pick my kids up from work. I get to go to the gym. I get to eat healthy. I get to stay at work and dedicate myself to the cause that I believe in. And by simply saying I get to rather than I have to, we reframe that conversation in our minds. And this is what a small mindset intervention is about, by just making a subtle shift so that we see the world in a different way and start to see the same experiences as evidence of something else, right? As evidence that we should work harder, or we should continue to invest in ourselves, or we should continue to believe in the path that we're following, rather than evidence that I'm not cut out to make it, I should give up, I should transition and try something else. So as we talk about mindset a little bit deeper, keep this in mind, that small, subtle shifts in mindset can end up leading to significant outcomes over the long run.